Good morning. Welcome to those of you joining us. We'll get started in just about a minute. All right, Tara, I think we're ready.
Great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our CITL webinar today. I'm Tara Corshane. I'm the Chief Research and Development Officer at CAST, and I am very excited to be facilitating. I want to introduce our two speakers today who will be talking about netnography and the why and how to research online cultures. So our speakers today are Stephanie McCoy, sorry for the background, and Crystal Mary. Stephanie is a Doctoral Academy Fellow and a student at the University of Arkansas Curriculum and Instruction Doctoral Program. Her program of research comprises three interconnected lines: gifted education, teacher education, and digital ethnography. She has an extensive presentation record and multiple manuscripts in development and under review. And then our second presenter today is Crystal Mary. Crystal's a doctoral Razorback Sooner Teaming for Transition Scholar at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. And she is pursuing her degree in special education curriculum and instruction with an emphasis in educational, instructional, and assistive technology specific to pre-service teacher education and the transition of students with disabilities to post-secondary employment and education. She is also an instructor at the University of Arkansas teaching inclusive technology with national board certification as an exceptional needs specialist. And her current research interests include online secondary transition services, policies and instructional practices, twice exceptional students, inclusive technology in secondary and higher education settings, including VR and AI, financial literacy in special education, and instruction of pre-service special education teachers. So we are very, very excited to have both of them here today, and I will turn it over to you both.
Well, thank you very much for having us. We are excited to be here today. So as we join you today, we are wanting to talk about this netnography. So just a couple of things. As Tara said, we are both doctoral students and instructors with the University of Arkansas with varied interests in research. My interest with netnography and Crystal's interest with special education, and we came together and we are here to present with you today. And so just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. Tara's here to help moderate with us today. Use emojis. We love those. They definitely help us kind of see how we're doing with questions. We will stop and answer questions along the way, but we also have time at the end to answer any questions that you may have as well. So today's goals, we are going to begin by looking at the meaning of netnography and its application for education research. Then we're going to move into how netnography can be used to help pre-service teachers be critical for the use of social media as they prepare for their own classroom. We want to look at how, as higher education instructors, we can integrate social media into our own lessons to model for our students. But then we will close out today's presentation with a discussion because we really want to see how you are thinking about use of netnography as research in your own classrooms and in your own practices. So what is netnography? Netnography is often used synonymously with virtual ethnography, online ethnography, digital ethnography, social media research, cyber ethnography, and other like terms. However, netnography sets itself apart from these other areas due to the systematic approach of its research. It has steps, it has processes. It is a moderate philosophical approach and reliance extensively on a social media data along with other interactions found online. And it's offline as warranted by the research. And we're going to get a little bit more into what all that means, so don't worry. Netnography's adaptation to technoculture is extensive and ongoing, making it flexible, which is key. It's a flexible methodology, so it adapts to the social culture that it's studying. So it must change and stay relevant. Because technoculture is really online and it's really big and it's broad, there's a lot to that. Crystal and I are really going to focus more kind of on the social media aspect for today. So throughout the presentation today, you're going to see us really focus on that social media aspect of the digital media world. And I want you to understand too, we will be able to provide copies of the presentation today, so you will have access to these slides later. So the purpose of netnography is to answer this cultural questions, this technoculture questions. And we think of the contemporary technologies that impact who we are, and thus the use of technology then creates these new cultures, these new subcultures. As netnographers, we explore how human culture and society is accessible through online different platforms, which pop up continuously all the time, and how it's explored by different cultures. We also ask questions about how culture and technology intertwine. How are these connected? These questions might include how social media platforms are used in political or social mobilization, as seen in the Arab Springs, when Facebook was a huge impact in that, or used locally for school bullying. How is cell phones used to impact that? How is school bullying seen in Snapchat? And so netnographers might look at how those interactions play into the school bullying aspect. So what is social media and technoculture? We often think of social media as being the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. However, social media is really this broad term that means any website or application that allows users to create and share with others for the purpose of social networking. Social media also needs a moderator that moderates, thus a moderator, the conversations that happen online. According to Hootsuite and their research, there are currently over 4.62 billion active social media users worldwide. And the number of social media platforms is really hard to determine because of subreddits, the ability to create personal blogs, and all of the new social media platforms that pop up daily. And we're going to get to talk a little bit more about some of these throughout the presentation. Here's one example from my research that I'm currently doing on how pre-service teachers use TikTok as a classroom management resource. So my dissertation is looking at how classroom management videos are used by pre-service teachers. So over a 6-week period, I had 6 pre-service teachers respond to digital diaries about their use of TikTok. And so these students responded, they looked at social media on TikTok and they found videos. Their resources fell into 3 main categories: behavior, environment, and instruction. And I looked at these videos and I categorized them, and I considered the comment sections of the videos, the pre-service teachers' reactions, my reactions in an immersion journal, which I'm going to discuss a little bit here later, the hashtags that were on these videos, the emojis, more the conversations back and forth. And then I went back into the literature and I found how it responded. And this graphic shows and illustrates how the videos all corresponded back and forth with the literature. And so I really wanted to take a look at how the teachers used the videos, and the whole culture of classroom management resources that teachers were using online, and the discussion, not just the videos, but the discussion back and forth, and how it fit into teachers' use in the classroom. And this is just the beginning of my year-long research. So this is one example of how I used it in education, but it's not just in educational research. It can also be used as pop culture. So some of us may have heard of this case that's been going around of this Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I don't know if anybody has heard of that case, but throughout that case, they used some of their social media. And although these graphs really show a quantitative example, we are more concerned with qualitative. However, netnography researchers may look at these graphs and go, wow, that's a really interesting hashtag. I want to explore that hashtag more. Or, wow, I really am concerned with what happened during this time period. Let's explore this time period more. I wonder how these were used or what was happening during these time periods. And so as a social media netnographer, I'm going to be interested in the use of specific hashtags on social media, how terms were shared, what discussions surrounded certain terms. I am really sorry that my dog decided to bark right now. Or how the spikes of hashtags correlated with other discussions. So let's get into talk a little bit about the netnography process. Netnography is really this qualitative methodology that follows the systematic procedure, as I said before. It is not a quick and easy approach to digital ethnography. It has an extensive reliance on social media data and these interactions that occur. Netnography studies the online ecosystems, or these cultures that are developed in digital spaces. But it's rarely used. So netnography is not really used in education very often. It's more used in market research, or it's used in, I see it used a lot in travel, but I aim to change that. I want to see netnography used more in education. Netnography is very creative, and it's a flexible approach to studying cultures presented in digital, virtual, augmented, and social media interactions, and it had topics relating directly to cultures and the use of these technologies. And we know that those are used in education. It's just not seen yet. Netnography has a great benefit. It is low cost compared to traditional ethnography, and it's less intrusive because it's used through observation online. It's easy to mask user identity. Data is collected in an immersion journal, which I know I've said that word. We're going to look at that here in just a few minutes. And research is practiced through reflexivity by recording your research through a process all through the research study. You reflect, you record through that. Unlike other approaches to digital ethnography, netnography follows specific steps. Due to the time, focus is placed on these steps, the movements, and the priorities. Here are the steps. So to begin ethnography, first, you need to focus the research through initiation. In this step, you, as the researcher, plan your approach to the study. You may consider whether you are drawing upon theory or interest in your research. You might consider the specific digital platforms you want to research. Are the platforms private or public? These considerations will determine if you proceed in the future procedural movements. As you begin to collect the data, you immerse yourself in this data. That's where the scuba diver comes in. You immerse yourself in it. You begin to learn the online culture and the various rituals of the data, the community, the stories, the beliefs, the information through the sharing of the media. During immersion, information is collected in an immersion journal. My example's coming up. I'm getting you used to this term immersion journal. It's really important in ethnography. It's like a field journal of ethnography. During immersion and this immersion journal collection, this journal acts as your collection of all your notes. It's composed of text, graphics, photographs, audiovisual data. It is everything that you see online. From immersion, you have a choice. You can either move to investigation, interaction, or integration. Investigation involves searching and seeking out cultural online sites. At times, this is already determined by the research question, but at other times, it is important to scout cultural sites for investigation. Interaction is the explicit questioning or research engagement with online community. So you're engaging, you're asking, you're going back and forth. For some ethnographies, immersions will be sufficient. You only have to observe. However, at other times, researchers will wish to interact with participants through this back and forth discussion. It is always important to disclose yourself as a researcher. Never hide your identity, never pretend to be somebody else. Never set up a private, different social media site and be a different person. You always are a researcher if you are participating with someone. There are many options for interactions, which include interviews, digital diaries, web pages, mobile devices, and more that are online and offline. Once you go into integration, this is where data starts to be interpreted, analyzed. It overlaps with the data collection as that graphic demonstrates on the top. This is because netnography is a continuous process and the researcher is continuously reflecting on the data collected. The netnography process requires decoding, translating, cross-translating, and collecting data fragments and cultural understandings between the parts and the wholes. So you're looking at the individual social media collection, but you're also trying to understand everything together. It is during this integration that the researchers really looks at the data, categorizes it, and it starts to use different processes. It uses the phenomenological, existential, discourse, hermeneutics, I always trip on that word, methods of interpretation. And these are different styles I'm introducing you to. And I do provide resources for more information at the end. Finally, the last step, incarnation, which the graphic shows is the publication in some form. You're presenting, you're writing, you're sharing, you tell your colleagues about what you found. As with most studies, starting with a solid research question is generally a great place to start. For netnography, how, what, and why questions help frame your study. How questions are based on the process of requiring some description of a social or cultural process. For example, in my current study, one of my questions is, how do pre-service teachers use TikTok as a classroom management resource? I am interested in looking at how the pre-service teachers as a culture utilize social media platform for a specific context. What questions structure themselves around platforms, usually around a platform of community or a narrative? Another question in my study, what evaluative criteria do pre-service teachers use when choosing classroom management teaching resources on TikTok, gathers information to the types of meaning the pre-service teachers apply to the chosen videos. Why questions require a little bit more digging and explanation into the underlying causal forces. As an example, I might ask, why do pre-service teachers utilize social media to supplement classroom management resources in the classroom? When determining your research questions, you want to think about the search terms. You can begin by simplifying your search terms or scout new sites. As you begin searching these sites, try alternate terms, new terms. Be open to new hashtags, classifications, sites, but be careful of following too many rabbit trails, which is really easy to do when you get on social media. You may find yourself sending random videos to one of your best friends, as Crystal knows happens quite frequently. Here is an example of that immersion journal that I keep talking about. This is what it looks like. So the netnographer collects deep data through screenshots, notes, memos, thoughts, reflections, more. As a netnographer, we consider deep data as emotionally compelling, subjectively significant, creatively productive, powerfully communicative. This is an example from my own immersion journal of my TikTok research, which I have over 150 of these slides. You can see my entry includes the date and the time, the quantitative data from the TikTok video, screenshots, clips, which are kind of in the gray, from the conversation thread, my judgment, which is in the green, and which is also written below in the notes section, reflections from myself and from my pre-service teachers. The accumulation is a collection of my thoughts over time, which is over a whole year that I did this study, which some netnographies can last that long, but they may only be 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I actually did multiple mini netnographies over the entire year. On the right side is the series of the top 10 videos from the hashtag classroom management over 8 weeks. This was one 8-week netnography that I did within my whole year-long study that I am doing for my dissertation. I monitored what videos showed up on my feed. I was looking for what themes and what I saw was common among the top 9 videos over 8 weeks. I used PowerPoint as my immersion journal. And as I stated, I had over 150 slides so far. This slide here is some of the things that you can include through your deep data, and I've added it so that it can be part of the notes as you have for later. In addition to online data, the researcher collects this deep data. This is what is part of our deep data. You can also do offline in the form of interviews, which can also be online using tools such as Facebook groups and so forth, digital diaries, which come in many different forms, collaboratively, focus groups, surveys, and other data collection techniques that are applicable to the study. The analysis occurs over the immersion journal's collection of information. There is a lot of information on the process of data analysis and ethnography, more that can be covered in one slide or in one webinar. However, two areas that stand out to me are interpretive analysis and the hermeneutics analysis. Interpretive analysis is simply making sense and covering meaning. That's my way to simplify that. It's really a whole lot more. And then the process of hermeneutic analysis entails dismantling the specific networks to gain a deeper understanding of what they imply. And then such as the beliefs and the hidden ideologies, and then their connections to the institutions, identities, and other social systems. So we're trying to really find those hidden connections of the parts and then how they connect to the wholes. Again, very simplistic explanation to something much more complicated than that. But again, just as an introduction to that. So on the ethics, one slide on something that is a lot more complicated. Netnography presents several ethical challenges, and one area netnographers should be aware of is the expectation of privacy and when to obtain consent. As a general rule, most people posting to online spaces do not realize that their information can be utilized for research. Under fair use, researchers can, under most circumstances, use screenshots and information from social media in public spaces for research purposes, publications, and presentations. If a social media site requires special permission or login credentials, or you interact with participants, then consent must be obtained as well as an IRB. Always check with your institution to double check to make sure. But just imagine that you're standing in a park making notes on an observation. If you write down what you see and you hear and you watch without identifying a person that can be traced back to them, you are ethically okay because you are in a public space. However, if you enter the closed doors of the bathroom, I know that's harsh, but I'm just making a point, you need additional information. But if you converse with someone, you need to identify yourself as a researcher. Regardless, netnographers should take precautions to protect the anonymity, I can never say that word, and confidentiality of participants by changing usernames and making sure information is not harmful to participants. Netnography is a systematic approach to doing netnography. So it is not a shortcut to digital ethnography. As a researcher, you are not focused on quantitative numbers, but rather grounded in deep data gathered in immersion journal. Netnography is held to high ethical standards to protect user identity, and researchers should always be cautious of private and public spaces. Here are a few articles that I highly recommend that are great mentor text. These are not necessarily in education because I said it's not in education. That's a space that I'm working to carve out. I do recommend the Urbanks and Rocks as a great mentor text for looking at the private and public spaces. Here are some great resources for what netnography is. If you're looking at a great textbook, not a textbook, but a great manual on what netnography is, Netnography, the Essential Guide to Social Media Research. That's definitely the book, the go-to book. My book is, I'll show you my book. My book has been used so much, I had to get it rebound and it's falling apart. Upcoming, there are some great how-to books and a global webinar too. So there's some great upcoming information as well. If we have any questions, we can. But I know Crystal is getting ready. She's going to talk about a little bit how we can use netnography and social media in the classroom.
That sounds great. Thanks, Stephanie, and we'll pass it over to Crystal.
Okay, so why is netnography important to consider in educational research, and how does that connect back to the classroom? It really does provide educational researchers the opportunity to kind of view the world of teaching that is sometimes restricted to outsiders. If you think about it, teachers post videos, stories, blogs, they post them all on social media and other digital sites, literally chronologically creating their entire teaching performance or career. You can actually follow a teacher. If you were doing a study over time, you can actually follow a teacher over the course of a long period of time to see how their videos and how their teaching examples progress. And so you can look at comment threads, start to ignite debates, look at new ideas, solve problems. And so we're going to look at a couple of those. So how are they currently using social media for education as a higher education student in pre-service teacher programs. These teachers are using it to follow current teachers that are currently teaching in the field. They're using it to follow teachers with similar interests or intersectionalities, whether it be gender, race, ethnicity, language, or sexual orientation. They're trying to find that support group that they need to be successful in the classroom. They are looking at classroom management strategies, like Stephanie previously talked about, how to accommodate for students in the classroom. They're looking for organizational structures. They're looking for internship support, especially during COVID. And I think this is kind of why Netnography, in a sense, has also taken a run in teacher education, because during COVID, this is when teachers didn't have the hands-on in-class personal experience with teachers in the classroom and students. So they were looking to online sources to try to get some additional ideas and practice, and social media came a part of that. They look for it to supplement their higher education content for internship support. They look at it for technology shortcuts, which I think all of us do at some point. I know all of us at some point has probably looked up a YouTube video on how to solve a problem, right? Connect with schools where their actual internships are. So a lot of them are connecting to the public school websites to try to learn more about their schools or resources. And they're also trying to find communities of teachers within the similar content area. So like math, science, English, and context, or even geographic location that are in their area to help support them. So this is an example of 3 teachers currently that have built a huge following of intersectionality within teaching. The first one is a neurodivergent and disabled teacher. She currently has 20,000 followers, 691 posts, and 92 comments per post. So if you think about the data, if you were to review all the comments and videos within that just within her one platform, that's a lot of data. And teachers are following her. And then you have an LGBTQ teacher. He has 23,000 followers, 561 posts, 120 comments on average per post. And then you also have a Black LGBTQ with multiple intersectionalities. And this is, she's got 60,000 followers. And this is Naomi, and she actually has up to 1,600 comments per post. So there's all these groups out there that are researchers are currently looking at in the literature, but they're not looking on social media. And this is one place that we can look. So here's just a couple of examples of how pre-service teachers are using it. And these are a few TikTok videos that we wanted to share with you to see how they're actually using these in the classroom. And Stephanie, you can just maybe play like the first 30 seconds or so, so we can be on time.
For the last couple weeks, I've used Respectful Rhino in my classroom for behavior management. Each day I pick a student that was being really respectful the previous day, and they get to hang out with the Rhino all day long. I created these certificates.
So as you can see, this one's particularly specific to behavior management, which was also one of the connections that Stephanie made in her TikTok research. It was one of the big bubbles, is that they're trying to figure out classroom management strategies through social media. And so the next one is social skills, and it's how to be flexible and open to other people's perspectives.
An example of my weekly social skills lesson in my special education classroom. Typically, each lesson includes a teacher-led PowerPoint student packet, 1 to 3 games or hands-on activities, supplemental worksheets, and the lesson plans. These are all fairly easy to prep, which is printing, cutting, laminating, and stapling. Each lesson is at least an example of my weekly social skills lesson in my special.
So, I mean, these are, and the thing is what's really cute about all of these, you know, and Stephanie kind of mentioned it, you know, she had asked her teachers, well, why did you choose to share that video with me? Why did you choose to pick that one? You know, what was the purpose? You know, and so we're going to get a little bit more into that as well. So let's look at the next one, lesson plans, our favorite.
All right, today with my 5th graders, we are doing one of my favorite lessons that works with inferencing. So I set up like a crime scene in my classroom. I'll give you a look of what it looks like. So it looks like this. I use caution tape for fun. So I'm incorporating math into it. So all of our suspects of who might have done it are under these math problems. So like one of the suspects is Dory, Harry Potter, SpongeBob, Red Crewmate, and Baby Yoda.
And so as you can see, these lesson plans are engaging, they're fun, they're exciting. You know, teachers are wanting to kind of break the barriers of the traditional teaching method, and they're using social media to do that. They're also using it for organizational strategy. So I have some Instagram posts here. And if you notice, these are two different people, but there are similarities. It's bright colors, organization, there's large fonts, there's images on individual drawers and items in addition to the text. So that's an accessibility feature. And it's something very small that teachers can do to not only help their instructional practice, but also help their students in the classroom. So I think it's just something to consider when, you know, this is an excellent place to research, you know, why teachers are doing what they're doing, and why are we not looking at it. So this is just an example in higher education, how I specifically integrated it in my inclusive technology class. The inclusive technology class is for special education teachers who are juniors who are getting ready to go into their internship. And so what they actually had to do was we collected a list of teachers that had classroom needs specific to students with disabilities. And they actually had to go out and create some type of small assistive technology device. They worked in groups, and each group had $20. And they had to look at the challenges that come across with, you know, creating something from social media. So they had to pull different social media ideas based on what they had to create. Some of the issues they ran into after completing, and I kind of set them up not for failure because I knew there was going to be some challenges, because we have all been there as teachers before. But for example, the balloons, they didn't read the fine print or the comment section, and they didn't read into the information more to recognize that, oh, I should have double bagged the balloons, because if I don't, they're going to explode and the sand's going to go everywhere. In the sensory bins, they added glitter, and any teacher knows that we do not add glitter in the sensory bins. They added oil in the sensory bags, which actually ended up making a slight mess because they didn't use the right grade bag. And so there's little tiny things that they missed along the way, but there were also some amazing things. Another thing I noticed that they missed was that they created PEX cards and then they printed them out, but they didn't cut them out before they laminated it. And that's just a simple thing that they learned along the process, is like, oh, I probably should have read the instructions within the social media website or the blog or the Pinterest page or whatever it may be, because they didn't realize that they just printed it out. But with a lamination machine, you have to cut those out before. They did a video model on a computer screen that they got some ideas off YouTube from. But they didn't individually create the YouTube videos. They actually ended up merging them together into multiple YouTube videos. So at the conclusion of the project, I asked them, what if you wanted to use just a part of it? What would you have to do? And you don't need the whole video. And so they didn't realize that, oh, I should probably break this up into individual video models, so that way I can share it to multiple students. And so based on the need. So it's really interesting how, as an instructor, you can kind of pair social media and start to get them kind of accessing more information. It's just creative. But they did do a positive peer assessment at the end. You know, what do they like about the assistive technology? What could make it better? How could you use this in the classroom? So really focusing on how can we improve our teaching practices in creating these assistive technologies for the classroom. So I really enjoyed this activity, and they did too. And I think they learned a lot from it, even though I knew there were going to be a few hiccups along the way. So just real quick, these are just a couple of ways that we can model best practices for social media strategies too in our own personal classrooms in higher education, for them to carry over into their classrooms. Facebook and Snapchat is not usually used as often anymore as Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. and I put little stars next to those. But you can, a lot of us still use Facebook for news integration or digital literacy. You can also look, and I think Purdue actually noted that 33% of employees are still using Facebook for hiring profiles of teachers and other social media outlets. So it's important to recognize too that, you know, what you post on social media can influence your job hiring process in the future. Twitter integrating hashtags. There's also fake Instagrams and fake Facebook accounts that are like a template that you can use for practice and integrating into different lessons and things just for fun. Snapchat for Snapchat. What's the difference between a one-way and a two-way communication system and how we communicate? Instagram, this is probably one of my favorite memes. And if you are a teacher, you have probably seen Bad Teacher. But this was actually one that I posted in a discussion board at one time. And within the meme, I know it's kind of hard to see. So it says, now you can tell me why Jim cries, but now who can tell me why Jim cries when the hole in the tree is filled with cement? And so one of the students said, because she's a crybaby. And then, so the teacher, of course, says, get out. Well, we've all had or seen a teacher who probably didn't have the best classroom management practices and told a kid or a student to get out. And so we actually created a discussion board in the classroom about this particular meme or this image of how would have been a better way in order to communicate if you had a student who said something like that out loud. And so it's just a way of finding small ways of integrating those social media aspects into your classroom. And it doesn't have to be a big project. It can be something very small. Including video models or how to do something in the classroom on YouTube, integrating YouTube videos with evidence-based practices, integrating leaders in higher education, especially if you find them on YouTube, and integrating those videos and having them subscribe to channels. If you see here, these are some of the ones that I subscribe to, such as DAD through CEC, Delve is a qualitative tool, Flipgrid, of course, Edge Elastic. These are just samples that I currently follow. And anytime a video pops up, I get to share. So I see that there's a few questions in the chat. So Tara, let's see, is there anything that I want to address before I move on?
I've been answering them. And then when we get to discussion time, we'll talk about it.
All right, no problem.
Sounds great, Stephanie. And Crystal, I have one quick question though, as you were talking about this, and it sounds like you like, do you talk about or show them like what to think through if they want to try something, like in terms of vetting, or like if they see a behavior management strategy, like maybe you don't want to try this because, or you do want to try this?
Yes, and that's actually one of the things that we talked about in the project. Excuse me. So there's not right now, and that's one thing that me and Stephanie are working on, actually, is trying to come up with a tool, like more research-based tool to actually, analyze comments and questions within different social media aspects. But one thing that I did have them do was look at the number of followers. How many followers do they have? How many views does it have? What are their connections to outside agencies? Where do they teach? How many years of experience have they been teaching? Outside of just the visual aspect of it, the music, the all the bells and whistles that come with the video, to analyze the comments. What did the comments say? Were the comments more negative? Were they more positive? Were they confrontational? Did it cause any type of bias or something that might be questionable? And one thing I always tell my intern teachers who I supervise in the field, because many of them have come with me from ideas from teacher pay teachers, or they come from ideas from different sources. And I always tell them to check with their mentor teachers and to make sure that it aligns with the curriculum, make sure it aligns with the teaching practices, and just, making sure that it's something that's going to be beneficial to the students that they're teaching in the classroom if they're in that internship phase. So it really just depends, but I hope that helps a little bit.
Super helpful. Yeah, thank you.
So pretty much in summary, the best 3 things I can leave you with from a clinical or practitioner perspective is be sure to teach those best practices to the students or the student teachers while they're with you. If you do that and you are integrating evidence and research and high leverage practices, they're more likely to be able to do the same when they're in the classroom or during their internship. Make sure you model and discuss, and that's that discussion to differentiate between, what's best practices and those are not. And again, how to assess whether or not they can do that independently. Are they able to, do that? Can they do it by themselves, or do they need support? And if they do need support, where are they looking and how can we fill that gap? And I think this is one that is probably the most important right now. And so many teachers, special education teachers and teachers in general, it's a huge research aspect right now. But not only that, but it's also a big national problem is teacher attrition. And, there's so many researchers out there that are currently asking, why are teachers leaving? Why are teachers leaving? Well, they tell you right here. This is, if you hashtag or if you go on TikTok and you search quitting teaching, there are hundreds of thousands of videos that you could analyze and their comments of why they're leaving. And I think that's important that, it's an aspect of research that we are leaving out. And these are public accessible knowledge that's out there and accessible. And that doesn't require an IRB, as Stephanie would say.
It depends on how you research it, Crystal.
I know. But you have to check, of course, with your institution because some institutions have stricter guidelines. But if you're looking into researching teacher attrition, specifically from a digital aspect, there's hundreds of thousands of videos out there right now, and teachers are telling you why they're quitting. And I know, Stephanie, you can build on this too, because this is one of your big focuses as well, including them.
It comes up in my research as well.
Yeah.
On classroom management resources. It's fascinating to see across platforms. I know Crystal's is TikTok, but it's across platforms.
Yeah.
And that's one hashtag. I know for my hashtag, classroom management has 1.62 million. And that was just in one day. It grew throughout the year, and I just researched the one hashtag.
So currently, like in research, for example, in qualitative research, you typically need around, 15 to 19 different teachers. Sometimes a little bit less, depending on what you're looking at, in order to get a good qualitative analysis of why teachers are leaving. And so if you were to interview, say, 15 teachers at the year after they left, or in the process of leaving a school district, you can analyze that and you could get excellent qualitative data. But if you look on TikTok, there's or any social media site, there's even a larger range of access to the number of teachers and data in order to not only support your research, but also to try to figure out what we need to do to change in order to, get these teachers to stay in the classroom.
Wow, that's great.
And of course, if you don't know Bunny, I put Bunny.
You'll have to check it out if you don't know him. Be your social media homework.
And thank you guys both so much. I'm looking, Samantha posted a question in the chat, and it looks like, Stephanie, you've responded some, but I'm not sure if everybody could see it. So I'm just going to read it and then I'll let you respond. She had asked, have you looked into the correlation between posts, followers, engagement, and the success of their teacher paid teacher stores? She said she's assuming that they're creating and selling resources they're making.
Yes. So that's something that is actually really incredibly fascinating. So one thing that I have found just with looking at TikTok and then even looking at Instagram is that the videos, you can post a video to one site and actually get it to post to multiple sites. So I could post a video to TikTok and attach it to my Instagram account, so it posts to both accounts. So let's say that video that was the social skills video that Crystal shared, that video, most likely those resources, the teacher will say either, I found this on Teachers Pay Teachers, or if you want my resources, go to my Teachers Pay Teachers account, right? And so that teacher most likely posted it on both their TikTok and Instagram account. And so if they are selling it on their Teachers Pay Teachers account as well, that's generating revenue for them. And so, yes, there is most likely a correlation there. My research specifically does not look at that. However, I would love, I have a huge to-do list of research that I would like to do, and that's on my to-do list. I would love to do an ethnography following those lines. And then Samantha asked, do my pre-service teachers implement these strategies? That's actually my third research question, is to what extent are these implemented? Now, with pre-service teachers, it's a little bit harder to see how these resources are implemented because of time, and it's not their own classrooms. I'd love to see it done with first-year teachers. Again, future research study, right? It's on my list.
Great.
But
I wonder, Crystal, if you, I was going to say, if you could answer that question as well from your perspective.
Yeah. And I have seen them done. I've had, there was one that was quiet critters. That one went around all my pre-service teachers. So they do go in, and my pre-service teachers started to be more critical about their social, what they found and what they implemented, which was really nice.
During their internship, they will implement them. I would say about 70% of the actual lesson plans that were found that I analyzed all included resources from Teacher Pay Teachers. Almost 70% of them. I mean, a good chunk of them. Now, however, I did notice that they did modify them to fit the classroom. But I also noticed that mentor teachers and school curriculum had a huge effect on what they could and could not implement. So for example, I had a student in a scripted curriculum setting. And so when you're in a scripted curriculum setting, you're very structured and kind of, it's hard to be very flexible. So it also depends on who the mentor teacher is, but it is very difficult in pre-service teacher environments because it is not their classroom. And so we do have to tread lightly, as far as making sure that whatever they are implementing, they usually, as their supervisor, I will go through and check to make sure before they implement it, that it is an evidence-based practice, or that it applies to their content that they're teaching, that it applies to the grade level or to the needs of the classroom that they're in. So I do kind of double check, and they are required to send us their lesson plans before implementation. So that does give me an extra layer, and them an extra layer of support to make sure that it's kind of implemented correctly.
Thanks, Crystal. And then it looks like Marie asked, when you have a hashtag with so much data, how do you narrow it down?
Oh, that is so hard. You try really hard not to go down rabbit holes. One thing, and then you really look for where you have those rich conversations. And so one of the things that I have learned with netnography, and this has changed, in the beginning, it was you used like data scrapers, which would be, I'd find a hashtag and I'd go in and I would download through a data scraper all those hashtags into an Excel spreadsheet. And I would code it using any coding that, we would do, like a transcript. That has kind of changed to where it's more of a holistic approach with the immersion journal, where I would look at, and it's real time, which was something that is harder for me And that's where that immersion journal really comes into play, where I'm reading through the social media. I find that hashtag and I'm reading through and I go, this is a really great conversation piece around this hashtag. I'm going to screenshot or take an image of it, capture it, put it into my immersion journal and write my thoughts. And that's my data collection. And so that's how I narrow it down.
What do you use if you had, say, 1,600 comments? Is there a program or software or anything that you can copy and paste or use in order to analyze, or do you just screenshot?
It's real time, me going through reading those comments. That's where it's not that quick and easy process. Does that make sense? There's not a program that pulls them out for me. There's not that's where that immersion ethnography part comes into play. And that was a change for me because initially, because I had done that, I'm going to capture it all and go into it. Now I have used programs such as Export Comments to go in and pull a bunch of comments out so that I can go back in and read a whole comment thread on a TikTok video. So there are programs like that. However, the goal of Netnography is to be real time in the data and pulling it out through really copy paste procedures.
Now, I know I personally use, and I have just for the last 6 months, I use NVivo a lot. And there's other programs like qualitative softwares like Delve or Deduce and things like that. And what it'll actually do is you have the capability if you are, if you're looking for more of a themes, Samantha, like where you have actual themes and you're kind of looking for that, you can get those comments. Like, for example, in one of the teachers, they had 129 comments, not a lot, you didn't have 1,600, but you could copy that and export that into one of those qualitative softwares. And then you can code it just like you typically would, and then do that for the videos. But you would have lots of files, of course, to code, but it is possible. And so it's just, plus it depends on what works best for you as your research style. Just like Stephanie used slides and PowerPoint, but you do not have to do that. You could use OneNote or you could use any other tool that works best for you.
I know that I talk and speak with Robert Kuznets, who was the one that developed this methodology. He still uses slides, which I think is, and I have multiple slide ones. It's one thing with Netnography is in any social media research, it generates a lot of data that you go through and it kind of is that holistic, which is nice. I kind of like it as we go through.
Great. And Stephanie and Crystal, I know we're almost out of time. I just wanted to mention one of the great things about having you both today, and just thinking about Samantha's question or comment, is that you guys were able to share both the research around Netnography, and then Crystal really was able to talk about the next piece is how she's using it with pre-service teachers, or how pre-service teachers can use it, and then in-service teachers can use it in their classrooms. So really covering both of those different pieces, the research itself and then the application.
Thank you.
And hopefully we're also training up future researchers.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. Right.
Some new ones up.
We do have references available, and our contact information is available as well for anybody who has future questions. We're available.
And our LinkedIn is, we don't have it on there, but we're there as well.
Yes.
Great.
Follow us on LinkedIn. Just search our names. We're there.
Thank you both so much.